All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our May 28th Left Plan 2 board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start off by taking a moment of silence to remember our fallen brothers and sisters and police and fire, as well as those in the military. All right, thank you very much. All right, we have a very large agenda, a lot of things happening today. And then to my right, got Jacob sitting here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Don't screw it up. I say that with love, you know that. So. All right, what do we got, Jacob?
Okay, up first we have approval of minutes.
All right.
Second.
Set you up for that one, sorry.
That was easy.
Yeah. All right, we have a motion made and seconded to approve the minutes as presented. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 2 on the list is the financial expenditure audit results.
Okay, so just quick introduction on this. This is the annual financial expenditure audit. Typically, we get those results in November or December, but this year weren't able to get it completed by then. So this is that briefing, and we have some employees of the State Auditor's Office. I believe Jordan is going to speak.
Yep, and then I'm going to take over presenting as well really quick, so. Second.
Gonna ask a question before we get going. Stephanie, can you hear me? Do you have any relations in the fire department?
I do not, no. Is there a Garza?
Yeah.
Oh, Frank.
Frank.
Uh,
Frank Garza.
no,
Thank you.
No relation.
Okay, you're better off now.
Alrighty, I'm going to get started. So my name is Jordan Prince, and I was the AIC, the auditor in charge of the Left Board's schedule of expenditure audit this year. I have with me Stephanie Garza, the audit supervisor, and then Kevin Bush, our audit manager, was unable to make it. So in place for Kevin, we brought Jim Brunell, our assistant director of state audit and special investigation. So the presentation today represents an overall summary of our completed audit. To supplement this presentation, please note that we also provided a packet of information to management that included the draft copy of our audit report. This audit report will also be available publicly on June 2nd on the SAO website. So at SAO, we perform audits of governmental entities to increase trust in government by providing independent, transparent examinations. By performing these examinations, we hope to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of government. And we want to thank you today for participating in this exit conference. So the financial audit results, we conducted a financial audit for the period of July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. The objective of a financial statement audit is to issue an opinion as to whether the information included in the schedule of expenditures can be relied upon to make decisions. We are pleased to report that we are issuing an unmodified, clean opinion on the board's schedule of expenditures. This is the opinion you want to receive and provides assurance that the schedule of expenditures are stated fairly and are materially correct. We reported no significant deficiencies in internal control. We identified no deficiencies that we consider to be a material weakness, and we also noted no instances of non-compliance that were material to the financial or the scheduled expenditures of the board. After completing the financial audit, professional audit standards require that we share with you whether there were material misstatements that were identified and subsequently corrected by management. During this review, there were no material misstatements identified or uncorrected misstatements. So during this year's financial audit, we focused on salaries, wages, and benefits. We tested these for completeness, were all the expenses recorded in the financial statements and also occurrence, where all those expenses reported as of the schedule of expenditure date and all the reported transactions and events occurred during the fiscal year. And we found no issues during our review. We also looked at the presentation and disclosure of the schedule of expenditures. Was the financial statement, the schedule of expenditures clearly and appropriately presented? Were note disclosures complete and accurate? And then if significant financial events occurred, were they properly disclosed in the statement notes? We identified no issues as well during our review. So closing remarks, the audit costs were in alignment with our original estimate. We will also be sending a copy of the materials to the director at the end of this meeting. The next audits are scheduled for fall and winter of 2025. You'll have an accountability for your public resources, and then another schedule of expenditures. An estimated cost for the next engagements will be provided at the start of each engagement. Report publication. So we expect the board's report to be published on our website by Monday, June 2nd. If you have not already, you can sign up to receive email notifications on when reports are released, as well as other news, articles, and alerts, including resources our office publishes. Please note that in the past, as a courtesy, this email included a link to the report on our website and also may have attached, the final report as a PDF. We have changed this practice in our continuing effort to clearly communicate with you while following cybersecurity best practices by avoiding extra links and attachments. Our new correspondence will notify you when our reports are released and provide helpful instructions on how to locate your government's audit report on our website. Once your audit report publishes on our website, automated customer service surveys will be emailed to the agency head, audit liaison, and key points of contact identified by your agency for each of the areas selected for audit. We hope folks will take a few minutes to complete the survey, as all feedback is helpful in improving our services and knowing how we can better meet your needs. The surveys can also be forwarded to others who would like to share feedback on our services. And we want to say thank you to the DES and board officials and staff for timely communications throughout the audit process. Basically, everyone that we worked with at the board and DES that played a part in the audit was super helpful and on time with all the requests. And then our last is, any questions? Let us know.
Questions for? Not seeing any.
I did just want to thank Jordan and Stephanie for their work, and then also Jessie. This was her first time with the board leading this process. She's helped out Jessica in past years, but as they both stepped into new roles, this was Jessie's first year. And then Chloe also assisted Jessie with that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving on, correct?
Yeah.
Through our item number 3, which is the legislative session review. Jacob, you got that.
Okay, I'm going to go back to my comfortable place. So for the record, Jacob White, staff to the board. Start off with board endorsed bills that passed this session. So the board endorsed one bill this session, Senate Bill 5306, which allowed members of LEOFF 2 to purchase authorized leave of absence service credit if they retired instead of returning to work. And so this came from a specific individual issue and ended up passing unanimously by the Senate and House and will be effective July 27th. There was.
Go ahead, please.
Is that legislation can be retroactive to a certain date, or is it only going to be prospective as of July 27th?
Only going to be prospective. And then another piece of LEOFF 2 legislation, this was not one endorsed by the bill. It was actually a DRS bill that authorized local governments to use auto enroll for DCP. And so this is something that the state's been using and had a lot of success with. And there were local employers who also wanted to use it, but felt that they needed state law to allow them to do that. And so that was passed and will also be effective on the same date. This is one where I know when the state passed it, there was some questions about what exactly it was doing for members. But it does still, so just as a reminder, it allows employers can still, or members can still opt out of DCP. They're not forced to join. It's just if they do not take any action, it auto enrolls them. And it's just had a lot of success with helping people save. Left two legislation that did not pass, getting used to having this on the slide every year, but month of death. And so this was one the board did not endorse, but the select committee did. Yeah, just due to the cost, it did not gain much, if any, traction this year.
Jacob, do you see that coming back up again?
So the select committee had their first meeting a week or two ago, and I attended that. And I do not believe that is, they haven't adopted an agenda. So they did get this kind of same briefing of ledge session, and there did not appear to be much interest in pursuing it again.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we had the operating budget. So LEOFF contributions were funded at the board adopted rate. The general wage increases of 3% and 2% were also in there, and the funding for the board adopted exempt staff salary increases were also in there. So I'll get into the, I think in a future slide, yeah, I'll talk more about the contributions being funded at the adopted rates and why that was a more significant item in the budget this year, as that was not true for all of the pension plans. Also, I had on a slide, so this slide was finished a week ago before the governor signed the budget and issued vetoes. And so in the budget was an item addressing excess compensation. And so the current law is that if an employee earns more than 2 times their regular rate of pay during their AFC period, the employer has to pay DRS excess compensation for the impact to the pension system of that pay. And so the budget lowered that to anything over 1.5 times their regular rate of pay, which would include, it wasn't just for LEOFF, it was for all the pension systems. And so this would have had a much larger impact. So the governor did end up vetoing that. I know there was concerns not just from LEOFF employers, but also any kind of 24/7 facilities at DOC, DSHS, and with locals that would have been impacted by this change. And so with that excess comp, it's not the member that is billed for it, it is the employer. And there was no discussion of this. There was no bill on this topic during session. And we believe it may have came, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with it, but we'll talk about it a bit more later. But the Seattle Times ran an article towards the end of session, or a series of articles on overtime usage by City of Seattle employees, fire and police. And so we believe this may have been attempting to address the issues raised in that article. And then also in the budget, the select committee will need to study and report to the legislature on the tax, legal, actuarial, pension policy, and administrative implications of merging PERS and TERS 1 with LEF 1, or terminating LEF 1. And so what the legislature requested in the budget was there was 2 bills during session, which I'm going to talk a bit more on another slide, but I guess I'll save that. I'll talk more in an upcoming slide on that. I guess I will just add on that it was the select committee, because they did not ask for a study of LEF 1 and LEF 2. So as you may remember, there was also a proposal by the governor's office to merge LEF 1 and LEF 2. That did not end up getting a bill. And so the budget just asked for the study of these other 2, the Senate proposal and the House proposal, on either merging LEF 1, PERS 1, and TERS 1, or terminating LEF 1. So another bill that did not impact Left 2, but I believe will be of interest to the board is Senate Bill 5357, which had to do with the actuarial funding of the pension systems, and it impacted all the pension plans except for Left 2. It raised the assumed rate of investment returns from 7% to 7.25%, and then used that to lower the contribution rates. It also extended out the Plan 1 unfunded accrued actuarial liability payments. So it put a pause on those. And then after, I believe it's 2 years, maybe 4, starts the process of continuing to make payments on that unfunded liability.
Patrick. What was the cost savings from the 7% to 7.25 and also the actuary? Do you have that? Or
I
could you
do
get
not
it?
have it in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be guessing. I know I have it, but
Next meeting?
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and then some other bills. Sorry, just making sure it wasn't in my notes because I meant to have it there. No. Okay, so other bills of interest, and I started to touch on these, but there was the Left 1 termination bill out of the House, and so this would have terminated Left 1, taken funding above a certain percentage and moved that into the state general fund. I believe it was 120%. Would have moved everything above that into the state general fund. That did not pass. And then Senate Bill 5085, which would have merged PERS 1, TERS 1, and LEF 1, and used the funding from LEF 1 to purchase a COLA for TERS and PERS 1. And just a reminder, those plans do not have a COLA. And then there was the governor's proposed merger bill that, like I said, this one did not end up getting a bill number. We did have bill language, though, that we made available on our website that the governor's office allowed us to share. That would have merged Left 1, Left 2, terminated Left 2, and kept the Left 1 funds in a sub-account of Left 2 to continue to pay Left 1 members. And then there was another bill, House Bill 1571, that would have removed some qualifiers related to the presumption of occupational disease for heart problems. That bill also did not pass. So any questions on this?
Well, in our board packets, there is a section on, I'm trying to remember what actually possible benefit topics. And I'm not sure if it's appropriate or the place, but if Select Committee on Pension Policy is looking at the potential merger, different types of modifications to the plans, my thought is we should probably look at a Left 1, Left 2 merger as far as what that does, to our own group. I think we'd at least have you explore it and see, so we're ready in case they do something on the other side that we're aware of it. And then also as we move forward to have that kind of in our back pocket so we understand what potentially is out there.
Yeah, so we could do an educational briefing over the proposal and any legal administrative issues that were identified. The difference would be if the legislature, typically when the legislature asks us to study something, we also get funding for that study. Yeah. But yes, we'd be able to provide an educational briefing on that in more detail than I did today.
I would imagine some of the work that OFM did, as far as that bill may provide some of that insight as well. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. My understanding is there was a lot of legal analysis done on that bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
question,
Yes, please.
or an observation. Managing expectations becomes our hardest challenge, our largest challenge in many different dimensions on this board. A lot of times what we do signals or messages something that we need to be careful about messaging. If we are looking at something like this formally within a board meeting to have a presentation on this type of a topic, is there potential that we would be messaging or signaling an interest or some sort of a willingness to address this topic where none exists now?
I guess I would look at it, maybe the same approach as the legislature did when they put it off to SCPB. You know, really simply just to evaluate what is there and what the options may be. And my concern would be is that we did have a bill, which many of our legislators are aware of, that had the governor, the outgoing governor, Governor Inslee, in his proposal through OFM, laid a foundation to do something with Left 1 and Left 2. And so we know, working with the stakeholder groups, whether it's Retired Firefighters of Washington, Left 1 Coalition, or any of these other groups, they also have the same questions on what would a merger look like potentially with PERS and TERS. But then the question, what would a merger look like with a Left 1, Left 2? And so my thought, just kind of as I'm brainstorming out loud right now is, I think an educational briefing. And I think if we categorize it as that, it's really just, for the benefit of the board to understand. So when questions arise, we have maybe a little bit of, some of the answers to prepare ourselves. I'm not sure where it's going to go, to be honest, but I would rather us be in front of this than behind it. And that's just my approach.
So good point on that. And I think that might be a solution is if we actually title this or categorize this correctly as to exactly what it is versus what it's not during the presentation, that'll help manage expectations.
So for all of us, yeah, it's a good point on your side. Thank you. Other questions? Okay. Thanks, Jacob.
I guess to go back to this one, so are you interested in making a motion for that study here, or just to add that to the list for my next presentation on interim planning?
I think we can just move it over for consideration on your interim planning agenda.
Okay.
Wolf, did you have something? I'm sorry.
Just maybe an editorial comment, if nothing else. I'm eternally grateful not to be at OFM, but were I to be at OFM at the present time, and trying to sort through this, I might want to have sort of a packet of materials with which I would try to educate all parties. So maybe one of the things we could do in this case is find out from them and from others, where are they headed with all this? And then just be on the list of recipients of whatever briefings they're doing, rather than initiating something ourselves.
I know Jacob, or even not sure who, but I know that the select committee pension policy does not have Left 2 as a component.
Yes, so their study will be
Totally
leaving out.
understand.
Yeah, and so I agree with what, trying to follow, that thought process, Wolf. And I'm just trying to, it's kind of like we've been excluded. It's not that it's too strong of a word, but potentially as we go into the legislature, legislative session in 2026, there may be something that quickly develops that we may not have the answer to. So I was kind of thinking that if we, and again, working with OFM and DRS and other stakeholders, from the government agencies, that we, try to get as much information as we possibly can so we can at least be prepared.
No, totally agree. I mean, I think situational awareness is most important here. And just being educated, understanding what's going on, understanding how people are thinking about it, what they're deliberating about, having it be fact-based, objective is essential. It's extremely important.
Yeah, I will add that last time the merger issue was studied, termination was not studied, or it was mentioned, but it wasn't really part of the study. That the Left 2 board did a study on Left 1, Left 2 merger, and then the select committee did a separate study on the other plans, and then those studies were put together and taken to the legislature. But that was at the direction of the legislature, and like Dennis said, the Left 2 board was Left 2 was left out this time.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Any more questions?
Questions for Jacob? Right, not seeing any. So Jacob, I think you stay in the same seat.
Yes,
Right?
protected
So-
over here.
Yeah, you are protected. Number 4, 2025 interim planning process. And then again, that is in your board packet. You're not able to also have it in front of you too, so.
Okay, I'm going to start with the actuarial topics for this interim. Results of the actuarial valuation. As a reminder, this is not a rate setting year. Second one will be demographic and experience study, sometimes referred to as the Dexter report or Dexter study. This one actually only occurs every 6 years. So I don't know if all of you are as excited as me and the other policy people in the room, but this one's always pretty interesting to see. And I think there is usually a lot of questions from the board. Just get a lot of data on demographic assumptions moving forward that end up impacting contribution rates, admin factors. So we get information like what the expected disability rates will be moving forward, and rate salaries, how the salaries are expected to increase, and any changes to mortality rates. And I think in particular, there's been interest in this one when I spoke at, just like when I was speaking at WACOPS last week, of the impacts of COVID and just other issues that have gone on over since the last study was completed. And then there is the economic experience study, and the last one of those was done in 2023. And that in that report, in that study, the actuaries make recommendations on inflation, salary growth, and the investment rate of return, which I think will be kind of interesting this year after the one bill we spoke about that impacted the other plans.
Jacob, do you have timeframes to when you think these will be presented? If not, it's okay.
Yeah, we haven't pinned those down yet. Started talking to the actuaries about it. I think in the fall is when they typically happen, but sometimes they are able to do one a little earlier than that, but I think it's going to be in the fall.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to go through every single administrative topic, but I thought I'd try to highlight a couple that so last year we did have the Ombudsman Program Annual Report, and that was the first year of doing that. So annual report, we're going to do that again this year. We have get right back to work on the audit results. And let me see. I noticed item number 10 there. Steve will talk more about this during his admin update, but the executive director recruitment, the staff compensation program, Karen is going to be presenting next, and you'll get more detail about that process. This will be the first year of the board going through that. And then number 15, public comment process. That was an issue raised by Tor last year about the board does public comments at the end of the meeting, and that a best practice may be to move those to the front of the meeting. And then there may be some other best practices the board could consider as well. So we'll have a presentation on that this year. And then just there'll be some new faces from DRS. So we've got the DRS CEM benchmarking that Mark Feldhausen has done for a long time. And so he has retired. And Marcus, whose name I'm blanking on his last name, from OFM, has taken Mark's job and will be doing that. And he's already been in contact with me, seeing when he'll be on the agenda. So I tried to do him a favor and put that later in the fall so he has time to get acclimated. And then the DRS annual update, DRS has a new director, Catherine Leathers. And so I assume that she will be doing that update to the board. So any questions on the administrative topics? Okay. So just a quick reminder that before I get into the possible topics for the board to consider, The process, and I'm going to touch on this when I go through the topics of how many presentations that came up a few years ago where the board wanted to know, have a better idea of how much work they were potentially putting on board staff. And so I'll try to touch on that with each of the topics. So typical process is if it leads to the board endorsing legislation, there would be an initial consideration, a comprehensive report, and then the final proposal. As a reminder, the final proposal is the one where we have actual bill language, and we have some form of pricing from the actuary's office before the board makes that decision whether to endorse legislation or not. And then an educational briefing, which there's going to be a few on the list this year. Not something that the board is necessarily considering legislation on, but just emerging issues, topics that the board would like more information about. And so often, I think a couple on the list this year have come from board staff going to different conferences from member groups and receiving questions and or issues like the one we talked about earlier, where the legislature is considering merger and termination and wanting more briefing on that. Okay, so here are the possible benefit topics. I did want to add that there is a 12th one that came in after I had made these materials final. And so I'll just touch on that and then I'm going to come back to all these, but the 12th one is going to be, came from Representative Barnett. Steve and I met with him during session, and he wanted the board and the select committee to look at an idea of when a retiree returns to work, but they don't join the system. So a left two retiree takes a PERS job, doesn't join PERS, then the employer is not having to pay contributions. And so he was interested in how that would look if the employer had to pay into a deferred compensation plan, a 457 plan that the employer has instead of into PERS.
Who was that brought that up?
Barnett.
Thank you, Jacob.
Yes.
Jacob, so we can have it just tracking it, number 13, can we just put left 1 and left 2 as an educational briefing?
Yes. Okay. Okay. Then I'm going to go through each of these just to warn you. Okay, so touched on this briefly, overtime educational briefing. So the Seattle Times published an investigative article that they had spent months and months working on regarding increased overtime use by City of Seattle employees during their average final compensation period. And then there was the issue raised in the budget around excess comp that I talked about. And so the expectation here would be at least one educational briefing on what was in the Seattle Times article. I know the board staff had a lot of questions about this. And then when we've gone to member events, there's been a lot of questions and concerns about that article and just wanting more analysis of the data and some of the claims of that. And so it could be an educational briefing. And then with any of these educational briefings, it is still open to the board deciding to also get policy briefings if there's an interest in pursuing any policy changes. So any questions on that one?
AJ?
Did the Seattle Times reach out to you guys about this?
Yes, so Steve did speak to the reporter, and I know that DRS also worked extensively with the reporter in providing data and background.
Okay. Jacob, so I heard previous that legislature tried to drop it to 1.5 and it's actually still at 2 times.
Yes.
And educational wise for left 2 board, the benefit of doing this, because I think it says in their final average period, most police and fire don't have the option of either in or out. I guess they do. I guess they do. It's not mandatory overtime. So we're not talking mandatory overtime?
So,
See where I'm going with that?
yeah, so there's a lot of issues with this, with the.
So we do need the education because now I'm confused again. So. Okay, that's okay, Arbit.
I think the thought was since the legislature put that in the budget, that there may be interest next year, and we believe these two issues are connected. So I think that the educational briefing would mostly be focused on what was in the Seattle Times article and issues with overtime and collecting data and all of that. But then excess comp would also be discussed in that briefing.
I think the excess comp thing is what's most interesting to me. I'd never heard of that term before. At my department, if you are forced to work in 72 hours, 24 of that is paid at double time, but it's only if you're if you're forced to work that day.
Yes, and if you're double time, it's not excess comp. It needs to be over double time. So there was no record at DRS of a left to employer being charged for excess comp, but when employers do get charged, they can be significant bills.
Yeah.
And so there were also questions about that when I was once again at Walk Hops last week. This issue came up, and there were questions about how that bill is determined, how the actuaries determine what the amount should be.
It seemed like I don't know what their plan was here. I don't know of any other public employees that are. I asked around, maybe some electoral like linemen or something around that are getting these large overtime payments. But this specific thing did not seem to be the solution to the perceived problem. Thank you, Jacob.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Jacob, this one made me think about this, but just as we talk about briefings and education briefings in particular coming before the board, it'd be really helpful for me to get kind of a pro-con analysis versus just an educational briefing about what it is, but to break it down, like what are the pros and cons of impacts on employers? What are the pros and cons of impacts on the members? What are the pros and cons of impacts on rates? Those types of things. I think that would help me really dig into this topic a little better.
Okay. Yes, I'll include that.
Good point.
Okay. Surviving spouse medical reimbursement. And so I included a letter from a surviving spouse, Renee Marr, in your materials. And so the issue here was that surviving spouses of duty-related death are no longer fully reimbursed for medical insurance once they are Medicare eligible. And so this is an issue that's just been arising because we're getting to where spouses of duty-related deaths are reaching Medicare eligibility now that benefit's been around longer. And so the way the law is written now, survivors are reimbursed for PEB. PEB forces people, once you are Medicare eligible, to enroll in Medicare. The way the law is written, you're only reimbursed for PEB, not Medicare. So now those survivors are needing to pay for Medicare. They're still reimbursed for the PEB portion, though. So that would be, so the possible workload on that issue would be up to 3 policy briefings. And we expect it would be a small number. I don't have the exact number of surviving spouses, but it's, not a large number. And then we had catastrophic disability survivor benefit options. And so this was actually brought to us, came up with a member, and then in discussions with Department of Retirement Systems, the calculation of a catastrophic duty disability when it transitions to a survivor benefit is open to multiple interpretations. And so DRS was going to move forward with rulemaking on this. And so I guess I'll try to say that another way. So the question here is, you have a catastrophic disability retiree. Typically, when you're a retiree, you take a reduction to leave a survivor benefit. So how does that work when someone is catastrophic and your benefit can be based not on your underlying benefit, but at a minimum benefit that survivor retirees can get 70% of their AFC. And so when it's based on that, not the underlying benefit that they would have been owed if not for being a catastrophic retiree. Yeah, I'm not doing a good job of explaining this more clearly. It's complicated, and so this would be one where I'd go through the different options. And just to say that Department of Retirement Systems, when this issue first came up a few years back, they did a decision paper laying out 3 different options to consider. And they were going to start doing rulemaking on it, but have decided to hold off for the board to first study it and see if the board, what direction the board wants to go with that, what direction the board believes how that law should be interpreted for how to calculate the benefit for survivors.
Okay, Mark, go ahead.
So does this issue affect or their own systems that would be impacted by it, so that are impacted?
So PSERS just in the last couple of years got a, let me just look back here, got a duty disability benefit. Yeah, they got catastrophic. Yes, so they got a catastrophic benefit too. And so I've not talked to DRS about how, if they, I assume they do not have anything in rule for PSERS either. Yeah. So that would be something for us too, when we coordinate with select committee, to let select committee know that we're, if the board moves forward with looking into this issue, that we're looking into it, and they may also want to look into it for PSERS.
Right.
Firefighter employment at multiple agencies. And so this was an issue that the board studied last year. So when there's a member working concurrently as a full-time firefighter and then a part-time firefighter for a different employer, there was multiple questions raised. The board, as we studied it last year, kind of landed on one of the major concerns being the impact to what if they are injured on their part-time job. That part-time job is not in LEOFF, so they would not qualify for LEOFF benefits. And so how would that scenario play out? And so the board received initial policy briefing. I was working with the Board of Volunteer Firefighters and DRS for the Vol Fire to share their data with DRS, so DRS could run an analysis of get an idea of the scope of this, of how many full-time LEOFF members were also working as Vol Fire. And Vol Fire was not able to get that data last year, so we extended the data share agreement. They still have not shared that data, but I have not reached out to them. I didn't reach out to them during session, so if the board moves forward with this, I'd reach out to them and try to get that data shared with DRS. Although I did want to add that going into it, we know that's not going to capture everyone. That would just capture people who are in Vol Fire, and not every employer is in Vol Fire, and it's possible there could be part-time firefighters that are, just not in Vol Fire. So same thing, possible workload would probably be 2 policy briefings since there's already been an initial briefing. Standby pay. So this one's good and simple. Standby pay is not considered basic salary for LEOFF 2 members, while it is for the other plans. And so I provided a initial and comprehensive policy briefing last year. There was not a single data source, so I was flooding the state with public records requests to get data. Didn't hear back enough for the actuaries to be comfortable to give a pricing on that. And so the board decided to push that to this year and give more time for data to be gathered for OSA to be more comfortable with pricing it. And so I've heard back from additional employers. Left the actuaries alone during session. And so if this moves forward with the board, I'd provide that to the actuaries and ask for them to do that data analysis. And so there would likely be 2, or actually probably just 1 policy briefing. We could just do 1 policy briefing on that, since it is pretty simple and it's would provide the cost to the board for including standby pay and earnable comp.
Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jacob, I'm wondering also if on this one, because I mean, standby pay is the one that's come up, but I'd be interested also in understanding what's considered basic salary within each of the plans and what's not. So that we don't take up standby pay only to have another issue come up later. So I'd really like to get the full scope of kind of a comparison sake so that we can see an apples to apples comparison.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, any other questions on that one? No? Hey, paid family medical leave and unpaid family medical leave service credit. So this is one that the paid family medical leave act is fairly recent, and so we're having more and more members utilize that. And so there's been just questions about it to board staff when we're out at different events about whether that is or is not reportable compensation, why it's not, what the options are for members. And so the thought here was that it would be helpful to do an educational briefing on this topic. Any questions on that one? Okay, interest calculation in member accounts. So in 2022, DRS significantly changed the way interest is calculated for member accounts for a very long time. It had been at 5.5%. And so these accounts are, so for LEOFF 2, it is you make your contribution payments, they set in an account while you continue to work, and they earn interest. And so for a long time, that was at 5.5%. And so DRS went through rulemaking leading up to this change in 2022, and they changed it to currently it's at 2.75%, which is the long-term assumed rate of inflation. And so the thought there from DRS, and they did a decision paper, which I shared with the board a couple of years back on this issue. And the thought at DRS was that the purpose of those accounts was to protect them from inflation, that the amount should be protected from inflation. And so aligning it with that assumption would accomplish that goal. And so there's continued to be questions about that and whether that is correct and whether that actually meets that policy goal, or what the policy goals of LEOFF 2 are for those accounts and members. And so another way this comes up is, so why it might matter to members is members do have an option when they retire to not take their pension and instead to take a lump sum. And so this would have a large impact on that lump sum payment. And then also it comes up if someone does retire and they pass away, they don't have a survivor benefit, they pass away fairly quickly. There's an amount left over in that account from the contributions they've made and the interest it's earned that would go to their beneficiary. So it also impacts there. So the thought here was the board might be interested in an educational briefing, and then possibly it could lead to policy briefings too. So.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a thought comes to mind immediately is if we do this analysis, a study, can you make part of the analysis a Bachenhaus application or overview of this to see if it meets the requirements of Bachenhaus here, and if any movement at all away from an existing level of benefit is legal or proper?
Yes, we can include that. So just to explain that. So when DRS made this change, that change impacted all future retirees. So looking at whether it should have just been whether current employees who were already in the system had a Bachenhaus right to the 5.5%, and it should have only impacted new employees at the new rate. So we could study that. Okay, any other questions? Okay, and benefit enhancement career choice. And so when the benefit enhancement law was passed, the board drew a hard line on the date of when someone either, just as a reminder that there were, if you were already a retiree by before the February 1st, 2021 date, then you received a lump sum payment. If you were active February as of that date, you got the choice between a lump sum payment or the tiered multiplier benefit. And if you were a new hire after this was passed, you got the tiered multiplier and no choice for a lump sum. And so the question came up of there are people who were retired before that date, but had come back to work in a non-LEOFF position. And so they were not able to receive that lump. So they would have been only qualified for the lump sum payment. They could not receive that lump sum payment because it would have been an in-service distribution, and the IRS doesn't allow that. And so it's being held by DRS for them to be paid when they do separate from their current employment. And so the question came up of whether they should have the choice between the lump sum and the increased multiplier benefit enhancement. And the underlying policy, when I said that the Left 2 board drew a real hard line on what that date was, is there was concerns from board members of having any leeway there, that there would be a flood of people thinking, oh, I'm going to come back. If you allow people to come back and then have the choice, we'd have a flood of people trying to get jobs for a month so then they could get the tiered multiplier benefit. And so to protect against that hard line was drawn. And so the thought here is that there, are there policy concerns with reopening that up for people in this very specific situation? We haven't run data on how many people are in that situation. And that would be something we would do if the board decides to study this. So any questions on that one?
Is that lump sum benefit, is that earning interest for those people?
I believe it is, but I need to verify with DRS that it is and how much interest it's earning.
Okay.
Yeah, and I should add, as a reminder, the people receiving the lump sum, the board did include in that legislation that they could purchase an annuity. So if it is receiving interest and then we find out how much interest, those members would have the option to purchase an annuity with that lump sum at retirement or at separation. Okay. Duty disability health insurance. So this was one that the board studied last year, received it. It was a letter from WACOPS. It stemmed from a specific individual who was injured at work. It was taking a while for him to recover and to be able to come back to work. He had exhausted his COBRA coverage, and so, yeah, the board studied that for at the request of WACOPS, did the ed briefing, did a policy briefing on the different options people in that situation would have, such as being able to duty disability retire, that some employers, employers offered extended coverage longer than the one employer. And then this issue ended up being resolved between the member and their employer. And but the board did move it to consider whether it needed to be addressed this year or not. So that's why it's on this year's possible topics.
Jacob, just to
Yeah.
make sure I got this right. I know we talked about this last year. I know the issue was resolved when we're talking about a Bellevue officer. What would our work under the possible workload 2 to 3 policy briefings? What would that do? What would that change?
Yeah, it would be identifying a policy option to provide some sort of health insurance coverage for people in this situation. I think is where it was the direction the briefings were going. So to provide that health insurance coverage through LEOFF 2. So we didn't price that. It was just discussed as a possible option
I got you now.
Yeah, and I think like it fixed it this time, but for future times that we might need a bill to actually clarify the long-term, like how the process works, what the policy actually is. Is that kind of?
Yeah, whether it should be extended, I'm blanking on the exact dates of how long the current coverage is. And then, like I said, some employers have negotiated for that to be for them to cover it longer. But even then, there could be people who are recovering from a duty disability. It's taking longer than they have this extended coverage that's either required by law or provided by the employer. And so, yeah, what are the options for people in that situation? And there is at least the option with, it doesn't provide health insurance, but they would potentially qualify to duty disability retire from left to, receive left to payments. And then once they recover, they would have a right to return to that position with the employer. So it protects that position for them also.
Just to clarify, I don't want to go down this path, but doesn't that already exist? If you're cleared for
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
gotcha.
That was one of the things we discussed, is that
Yeah.
that may be an option for people that left to provides. Because then I believe there was some discussion of whether this was exactly a left to issue or kind of issue outside of left to scope as far as providing health insurance.
AJ?
If someone is off on a if they retire on a duty disability, are they able to access PEB or something like that?
Not able to access PEB, and they would have there is once again, I wish I had the time frames in front of me, but they would have access to their employer provided health insurance through COBRA for some period of time, but eventually that could lapse.
So the injured employee or the disabled employee has no access to healthcare coverage except for what they're getting through L&I or whatever workers' comp they have, and their family has nothing. That's correct, right? If they're providing health insurance for their family or their dependents.
I'm not certain. I'd have to get back to you on that.
I'm getting a nod.
A nod.
from the back
Okay,
of the
good.
room.
I think that was the big issue with the officer is that he was still getting coverage through L&I, but his family had been dropped.
Okay. Okay, move the next one. So this one came from a letter to the board from Curtis Wright, a member. So when the legislature made multiple exposure PTSD eligible for workers' compensation and left to disability benefits, they did not make it retroactive. And so this might sound very familiar to board members because the board did address this issue for some left to members for their left to benefit. But what this member is requesting is that the board, whether the board can assist with changing the L&I benefit. The board, like I said, the board did address it for left to non-duty disability retirees who had multiple exposure PTSD, that they could reapply for that benefit with DRS. Not what this member is requesting. They're requesting that they have been denied their L&I benefit for multiple exposure PTSD back before this law. And so they want something retroactive to qualify for that benefit, that L&I benefit, not their left to benefit.
Just to clarify, would that be L&I agency and not our agency?
Yes. And so if the board did move forward with that, it'd probably be 3 policy briefings.
So I guess that's my question is, does that belong here for this conversation with this board? I mean, other than us potentially taking a position of a lobbying effort around one or the other, it's not really a policy that is under the purview of the left board. So I'm just not sure why I understand why the question came here, but I'm just not sure if this is the right place for it. I would agree with that.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one. DRS appeals deadline. So this one's probably also familiar to you. We've studied it in the past, and it had to do with, there was left 2 members. We had a couple members around the same time have issues with DRS, with the lack of clarity and confusion on the appeals and petition deadlines. And so DRS has their administrative process to appeal. You first go to petitions. I believe it's 120 days you have to file your petition. And then it goes, if you disagree with that decision, you can appeal it, and you have 90 days to appeal that. And so the board was looking at whether to put into law that DRS needs to have 120 for both, or some the same time frame, or any other changes to that process. And so the board received initial, comprehensive, and final policy briefing on it, and then decided not to move forward with it at that time, to continue to have board staff work with DRS. And, and so we've continued to have discussions with them on that. I'm not aware of any issues since then with left two board members and missing any appeals deadlines. So hoping that communication in that process has been cleaned up and more clear to members since these couple issues arose. But if the board decided to move forward with that, because we've already studied it pretty extensive, it would probably just be 1 to 2 policy briefings.
I'll stay along the same lines. This appears to be a DRS issue. I mean, I understand some of how it affects our members, but it's a DRS rule policy, correct?
Yes. Yeah, there's a minimum time frame for appeals, which I believe is 45 days. So they've gone beyond that by giving members the 90 days to appeal. Yeah.
Good, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Bigger picture, if the board decides to move forward with that one, I was wondering if it's possible to get a account of how many employers are self-insured for labor industries and how many employers are not self-insured.
Yes, we could provide that. And I could follow up with an email on that too.
AJ might have. You got those numbers down.
Okay. So no questions on this one. And and we're not done yet because we did add a couple to the list. So let me just go back to my cheat sheet on that. Okay, so for item 12 for the board to consider was, here, let me. Item 12 was the issue from Representative Barnett regarding employer contributions into DCP, whether employers should be mandated to do that when they have a retiree who has returned to work. So for LEOFF 2, he was interested in that for LEOFF and for state patrol troopers, but for LEOFF here, it would be people who've retired from LEOFF and then used career choice to go back into a PERS position, but not joined PERS, that the employer would need to put the contributions, either the amount they would have put into PERS or some other amount into the employee's DCP account or 457 account if the employer does not use the state's DCP. And that would be 3 policy briefings on that issue.
Under that example, would that be a select committee?
Yes, so the select committee would need to study it for troopers and any other pension plans.
Well, I'm thinking from a LEOFF, if you have a LEOFF 2 member who goes to work
it goes to
PERS. I could see if you had a PERS, maybe let's say a teacher or TERS, who decided to become a firefighter after 25 years for whatever reason, and then they decide they'd have to get it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point because we are talking PERS employers. It would be for PERS employment, not LEOFF employment. I don't think there's a situation with a LEOFF member where, yeah, if they're in a LEOFF position, they're in LEOFF. They're not because getting out of it.
Yeah. So with this, is that it's not ours then, is it? I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I'm gonna look back at Steve on this one. Kind of PERS.
Yeah, it appears it'd be something and the select committee would both be interested in looking at potentially. Representative Barnett was going to reach out to the select committee reached out to Jacob and I and to Representative Berquist about the left two piece of it.
Just so I understand, how does it affect our board if you have a left two member who retires and they go somewhere else? Because it doesn't change our contributions. It doesn't change any of their benefits.
The board studies issues that affect left two retirees, regardless of contributions or anything. If you consider it a potential benefit to a left two retiree, that they would be getting some deferred comp in addition to their pension. So this is the only way you qualify for it is by being a left two retiree. So it's within the purview of the board.
Thanks, Chair Lawson. So Representative Barnett kind of brought this to my attention. I directed him to talk to our executive director and others to see, what this actually meant in terms of a need for a fix or not. I think it might be helpful at least to look into this and see what that brings to fruition. Because, I think there's probably going to be a bill on this next year is my guess. So we should probably get prepared for it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. AJ, go ahead.
Oh, this is Representative Burnett, who's a left member, correct? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, you're looking at number 11 and number 12 here as both possibly being oblique towards the left system here versus the DRS or versus a select committee on pension policy. I submit 12 has been taken care of by Steve on this, explaining why it actually has impact. I was going to say with 11, it strikes me there's almost some similarity here that, yeah, it is a DRS policy, but it affects left members. And quite frankly, the select committee on pension policy does not have any sort of a fiduciary is a strong word, but an advocate position for members out there, specifically within the several systems, including left. On this, and they quite frankly, the only board that would actually have the position or the responsibility to address this issue, if it impacted several, it would also impact left, would be the left two board out there. That would be the only advocate to bring this forward. Our attempt to get DRS to change policy issues out there sometimes has been falling on deaf ears. And so I'm thinking that this probably would be not just the correct venue, but possibly the only venue for this issue to be brought. So yeah, it has relevance too.
Good point. Thank you. Other comments, questions? All right.
Okay, and then we have a 13th item that we added to the list, which would be for the left two board to study the governor's proposed left one, left two merger, or not to study it, to receive an educational briefing on that topic. Okay, so that is the list of possible benefit topics. I'm going to leave it here on this slide because so the board would have the option today to take action to set the interim agenda for possible benefit topics, or could wait till next month and then receive another briefing and then set the agenda at that meeting. And I would add that topics can be added later too. So if you set it today, you can always add topics later as well.
I'm going to go back, just to understand maybe the feeling of the group is number 10, which was the retroactive benefits for multiple exposed PTSD, which Jacob, you mentioned that this was an L&I issue.
L&I benefit, yes.
Are we as a group comfortable removing that? I mean, go ahead, AJ. I'm just trying to make sure
make a motion.
You make, okay.
I might motion numbers 10 and 11 come off of this list.
Okay. Motion's been made for number 10 and 11 to remove from the list.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Second. Discussion then. Perfect.
Seems like it's okay.
Yeah, please.
Just from my observations, those seem like the two that might be more than we need to look at. We got a lot on this list. So
Did you hear? I'm not sure if you heard. You made a motion for 10 and 11 to be struck. It's been seconded, just so you're aware. Oh,
Mr. Chair,
yeah, go ahead.
can we amend it to add 9 to it also?
That would be,
I'd be open to that.
is a second, you accept it as a second? He's deferred.
No, I don't.
All right, number 10 and 11 are before us. Further discussion to remove from our possible benefit topics. Seeing none, I'm sorry, AJ, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the retroactive benefits for PTSD, I think it's an important subject to look at. I just don't think it's the purview of this board. And then to speak to Chief McGilligan's point on number 9, I think that there is some value in us taking a look at that for our members.
Well, the reason I bring it up is that it was specific for the one member. It's a health benefit, which left 2 does not have any type of health benefits involved in it. So why would we do a study on something we cannot mandate through the state, through any insurance benefits?
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
Oh, I just think that we could. There's an opportunity for us to do it.
Okay.
Give them access to PEB or something like that for a short period
Legislative
of time.
process.
Yeah, legislative process. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so on the motion, had items number 10 and 11. We moved and seconded. No other discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries to remove number 10 and 11 from the list. Is there other items or discussion concerns? Go ahead.
Curious if Jacob or others can speak to this workload for the interim. Is this still this seems like a large list.
It is.
Just wanted to run that by.
Kind of, yeah.
I agree, it's a large list. But I would say a handful of them are educational briefings, so it kind of depends on whether those end up becoming policy briefings as well. Which I know it's hard for you to know at this point until you receive that briefing.
And number 4 on the list, because we had our discussion, our administrative meeting this morning, is really based upon getting information back.
That's the other one.
And that's, it's highly likely it's not going to be able to go anywhere just because of lack of information, correct? I mean, you've been waiting 2 years, almost.
Yeah, 1.5 years. Yeah. Yes, and then standby pay also, but that one, I mean, it'll be also, it's not just work for me, it's work for the actuaries if these do progress to the point of getting fiscal notes on them or pricings. But at least, standby pay, like I said, that one will be, well, simple for us, not simple for the actuaries.
Yeah, and trying to shorten up the meeting, I guess, is what I was trying to do, but standby pay, under left 2, any and all other pays are supposed to be used for compensation, and they're trying to say standby pay is not considered a compensation? Is that what this, so to me, that's crazy talk.
Yeah, for the other pension plans, it's specifically included and it's not in left 2, so it's not been included in left 2.
But I always thought that Plan 2 is covered. It's kind of like the difference between Plan 1 and Plan 2. Unless it was positional, it couldn't be individual. And the only thing that was covered was positional, where left 2 was any and all compensations is included in their benefit. Something's changed?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is it's never been included in left 2. I can't remember the exact language of basic salary for left 2 and why it's left out. But my memory is that it's.
Okay, so I'm not trying to grill you. I just want to make sure that I'm under, because educational incentive pays are included. Overtime is included. Everything I can remember negotiating contract was included, and it was just considered anything, when they said anything other, every pay under Plan 2 is covered for compensation. And that's where it should be. So I don't even know why there's an argument here, but to me, that is one of those situations that why isn't it included and who made that call? Do we ever figure out who decided that at DRS that standby pay wasn't going to be considered?
Well, if the board moves forward with it, I can provide more of that information.
That's
in
what
the
I'm going to be
briefing.
asking because
Yeah, I
to
don't
me
think
that-
I did like the full history of it when I presented on it last year, so I can dig into that more.
AJ, you got anything?
I remember from the briefing last year, there was, maybe it was you that brought it up about
Yeah.
Tacoma, was that it was all you.
I never mentioned Katoma.
Oh, sorry.
I don't want to get them in trouble.
Sorry. I can't remember who brought it up, but there was something about a department that, yeah, and the way that they were doing it. So.
Yeah. I mean, we've always, we had to make drivers.
And
pay.
I actually think that there's a way, well, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. I was hoping to remove it, but now with this kind of stuff, but I think 4 should be gone. I still want 9 gone, but you're not gonna let me. But, so I'd make a motion for number 4 and if there's to be removed.
Motion's been made and seconded to remove number 4, which is a firefighter employment at multiple agency issue from our possible benefit topic list. Discussion. Go ahead.
I feel like there's still quite a bit on this list. We are going into a short legislative session.
Yeah.
I think last year we had, in our last year's short legislative session, we had about 5 issues. We've combined it into one bill. That was not as difficult of a budget year as we're probably facing next year. So we have to keep, I would recommend we keep in mind what some of these items might cost.
Yeah.
And how difficult these subjects are going into a short session with a budget crunch. But, I think this, so I think removing another item from the list is probably in our best interest right now.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
a follow-up on that. Good call on that. And quite frankly, what we're doing is we are doing something that is paring down, arguably prioritizing, what we're going to address here. This is not taking anything that's removed from the list is not taking a position on any of the policy or the bills themselves that we're avoiding. We're just figuring out actually where our time and effort's best spent. Simple as that.
Good way to phrase it. All right, on number 4. Seeing and hearing no other discussion, all in favor of removing it from this list, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Number 4 is removed. Any others? Don't be bashful.
Come on. We removed 3 and we added 2. So now. So-
We're in house money around the house. Line with the house.
Aren't, 2 of them are educational, right? 1 and 13.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there one that maybe we can move into that category so it's not necessarily the requirement, the workload requirement?
I would say 6 is also going to be an educational briefing. I don't know if that's something the board feels they want this year.
Where'd that come out of? What was the context? I'm sorry.
I believe it
I know I
came
could look back.
from questions that board staff were receiving at member conferences. So yeah, there wasn't like a written request that the board include that.
Could we, just thinking about the educational piece, could we utilize our networks, our stakeholders to disseminate maybe a 1-page briefing on something like that where it's going to get out to everybody? And my thought is that we'll hear the information here, but unless somebody goes to the website, maybe even putting a 1-page briefing somewhere on the website that, hey, here's an update on Paid Family Medical Leave Act or something like that.
Yeah, we could do that. We could, I don't want to, we've started to expand what we do with communications a bit with videos and other, so that's something board staff could look into.
I'm just thinking just a 1-pager.
Yeah.
Not saying we have to go back, but number 8 is we have that as considered as briefing. So
Yeah. Yes. And it could lead to policy
Oh, it could,
if the
okay.
board wants to move forward with that. So, yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead. Oh, Pat, go ahead.
by looking at it, what we have as number 6 looks like it may be an educational, but can we pull that one?
Motion's been made and second, remove number 6, and I think the intent is maybe just to communicate with our membership on that one. Thanks, Pat. You're a helper. Discussion on that. Seeing or hearing none, all in favor of removing number 6, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Okay. Yes,
I got one more, just as more of a question, and sorry, Chair, it's one you brought up, but I'm just wondering, are we thinking this left 1, left 2 merger conversation is gonna come back up again next session? I mean, I'm just, if we're certain it is, I'm seeing head nods around the room, then we should have an educational briefing to understand it more. If it's not, it's another one. I'm just wondering, do we need to take the time? But if it's gonna come back up again, then definitely we should get briefed.
I'll defer to our elected officials.
Well, I want to point out, the governor had a request for this legislation. Not a single member, though, actually presented a bill with this topic. So, and that governor no longer is here. The new governor did not bring it up. So no House or senator that I'm aware of had a plan on a left 1, left 2 merger. Maybe Senator Hawley has more to share, but it feels like the other two that are being studied would have more significance, in my opinion. But that's just me.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Hawley?
God, I love getting called out. You know, what I did before I was speaking of conclusions, when I spoke about the messaging on this and creating expectations, all that in consideration, Steve, exactly that. Is that something out there that was just kind of an anecdote, and somebody was lame duck on their way out the door, and who also proposed a lot of other things that were stillborn as he left. So I'm just saying that maybe when we combine this, the two sentiments here, that is something we actually need to do. Is this an issue we should bring up at this point? That anything we do is going to project, is going to have a bow wave because we're doing it. Is the timing right? So I'll leave that to the membership. I'm not going to make a recommendation. I'm just saying that everything we do has impact.
AJ, Pat?
Go ahead, AJ. Oh, man. Well, I go back to, I think Steve made a really good point, is that it was the guy going out the door that said, hey, look, this sounds like a good idea, even though there's only 7 or 8 active left 1 members that we get no contribution rates from. Their benefits are set. There's not going to be any changes. And so what would have been the effect, except for doing what they're trying to do anyways, is trying to get the money over to the general fund and away from Plan 1 and just say, we'll pay it out of the fund, which is going to be at the mercy of the legislature that absolutely said that's not going to happen this time. It's not going to happen. And I'm thinking there's no advantage to a bill like that coming forward. So I think what Senator Hawley said, I think this might be something. Hopefully we're not putting our heads in the sand. I don't think we are. I don't think anybody around this table is doing that. But maybe that's another one that could be removed also.
Just so Jacob, we could add these later. If we remove this from the list now and there's potential that it does rear its head again and that we're included in it, then we can, I guess, put some effort towards it.
Yes.
I think that good comments by everyone. And I know that, you're on, usually some of you others have joined with select committee, watching what they're doing, taking place at their meetings. Maybe we just need to keep our ears open, eyes open. And then if we start to see anything move in different direction, messaging is important. We had talked about this earlier in our admin where, when we deal with our legacy, whether it's, our left 1 or it's PERS, TERS, whoever it may be, when you talk about pensions and you start to mentioning the words consolidations, mergers, terminations, man, the angst level goes through the roof. And so, Maybe this is one way where I thought it was educational might be a good way, but to control the messaging, maybe we sit back and we just watch and see what happens. So,
Because we can always bring it back.
yeah, I appreciate it. It's good conversation. So thank you. Yes, sir.
So I'd move to remove item 13 from the list.
Second.
Motion's been made and second to remove number 13 from the list. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries to remove number 13. Thank you.
Can we address number 9 again?
That was your outside voice.
I know it was. Oh, I didn't think you'd make me hear that.
You left your mic on.
I know.
All right, what else? So right now I have that we have struck numbers 4, 6, 10, 11, and 13. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And we added 2. So we're doing good. We're still.
And we have one.
Oh, yes, right. We added 1. Yeah. So. Yep, 1's educational. 6 will be a document. Yep. Pretty. 6 was just moved. Yeah, but we moved that just to a document, maybe some communication. So. Is that a good list for right now? Jacob, is that better for you?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay,
All right.
so that's,
Good work. Thank you. What else before on that? Anything else on that subject of that?
that's all I had.
That was number 4 was the 2025 interim planning that's been accomplished. Thank you for that. Number 5 on our list is the salary setting authority, and Karen's going to present that to us. So, would you like to let's take a quick little break and yeah. All right, let's go about another 3 minutes. All right, we will reconvene our meeting and to finish up our discussion and presentation on the interim planning, would entertain a motion to adopt our schedule. So AJ?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
We adopt the administrative, actuarial, and benefit topics as modified.
Motion been made and seconded to adopt the actuarial, administrative, and the benefit topics as modified. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're good to go. All right, number 5 on our list is the salary setting authority, and that's going to be presented by Karen. Good morning, Karen. Or afternoon now. Oh, well, no, still morning.
Still morning.
Just feels late.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Karen Durant, staff to the board. Here we go again on this topic, salary setting responsibility. See if I can get this moving here. As a way of background, the board endorsed substitute Senate Bill 6197 and passed the legislature last year. We had a comprehensive market research conducted by our third-party vendor, Troop HR, and the board adopted the structure, process, and salary changes at the November 2024 meeting. As a reminder, the ranges adopted by the board for the position under their salary setting authority are listed in this chart. The consultant recommended and the board adopted using an inflationary index to annually adjust the ranges in the salary structure. The board adopted using the CPI for Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue, which was 3.7% for 2024. Source of the data is the Bureau of Labor Statistics and validated by the Forecasting Division at OFM. This is the new range with the CPI applied. Please feel free to stop me if you guys have questions. Here's the revised salary structure along with current pay. As a reminder, LEOFF submitted a budget request for permanent funding of the increased salaries after the November meeting. The board adopted the increases using budget variance to be effective January 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2025, if the additional funding was not included in the budget. As Jacob alluded to earlier, the increases were included in all versions of the budget for 2025-27, which means those increases are now permanent. The general wage increases in the budget for 2025-27 are 3% effective July 1st of 2025 and 2% July 1st, 2026. The board adopted an ongoing process for future based on the consultant's recommendations and industry best practice. Salary ranges will be adjusted annually to reflect the Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue CPI, as was shown in the previous slide. Market analysis will be done in even years, with the initial one completed last year and the next one to be performed in 2026. Performance evaluations were completed by the end of January and were shared with the administrative committee in February. Here's a reminder of the board adopted timeline outlining the sequencing to have the ongoing process align with the budget submittal process. Since the market data is the same as last year, you will not receive a presentation of a new salary report. The ranges adopted last year were adjusted by the 3.7% per the adopted index. In addition, since there is no new market analysis, OFM consultation may not need to take place. Then the next step in the process is to adopt any potential salary increases for the supplemental budget. Next steps, does the board want to make any changes to the process? For example, the board could adopt current and all future legislatively authorized and funded general wage increases. The board has already done this for the executive director. It would eliminate the need to adopt them every biennium. Consideration of any staff-specific increases, consideration of merit and performance. There could be an executive session to discuss performance evaluations if the board needed or wanted. Any increase above the already funded general wage increases would need to be adopted by the board, and we would write a decision package for consideration in the supplemental budget.
Mr. Chair. Item number 1.
Okay, go ahead.
For a permanent adoption of legislative funded general wage increases for all positions under the salary setting authority of the board.
There's been a motion to, as Pat stated, is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion.
Karen, I think this allows us to now not have to do, when they go, we don't have to come back and revisit this. It'll just be effective to staff.
Correct. So whatever would be legislatively authorized and funded in the budget, it would automatically happen and wouldn't have to come as a separate item to the board.
Which it's doing now. Correct. Which would.
Well, it's not doing it until
This
would do it.
Okay.
Comments, questions? Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I think I understand why we have to do this. It's because we really only had the authority over the director, and now we expanded that authority. And so we already did this with the director's position, and now we're just doing the same thing with everybody else in that band. Is that?
Correct. Plus, the budget also specifies that the legislature authorizes the funding for those levels, the 3% and the 2%. It could be allocated differently. Some agencies might do that for WMS and exempt positions.
Corey's motion to permanently adopt the legislative funded general wage increases for all positions under the salary setting authority of the board. Made and seconded. Not seeing any other questions or comments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Amazing. A 2024 process update. Post-session, Chair Lawson sent a response to the OFM salary setting concerns letter, which was included in your December board meeting package. A copy of the response and all of the backup materials is included in your today's package. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any other questions for Karen? I'd like to thank you for the help on the response back to Director Chapman C. So thank you. All right. Item number 6 is the administration update. Well, that calls for Steve to sit over there. That's pretty good.
It's nice.
All right.
Thank you for the report.
Different perspective. Things that I wanted to update you on.
For the record, can you state your name and who you are?
For the record.
Oh, I was.
Steve Nelson, staff to the board.
Yeah.
A couple of these are going to kind of segue into the ongoing discussions we've had about succession planning. One of the changes that we recently implemented on our team is that any decisions that leadership decisions that are being made that are going to outlive me, we put together a leadership team now with me and Tim and Karen and Jacob, and we're all working together on those decisions so that there's continuity after I'm gone. The first kind of test of that new process had to do with travel. And so just to let you know that what the team decided with the leadership team decided with respect to travel for the board employees, in-state travel related to outreach activities will remain unchanged. Out-of-state education and travel, including conferences, will be allowed 1 per team member per year. That's down from normally 2. Virtual education opportunities will be encouraged if available. And then other in-state opportunities will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis for approval. This may mean that fewer team members attend certain events. And just to be clear, there'll be no change to board member, fiduciary education, and travel. So that was the decision that the team made on that. And then we'll be implementing this new process again on future decisions that that are going to be last past me. Are there any questions about travel?
Go ahead, Patrick.
Steve, why would the team reduce the amount of travel for staff for education and other functions?
There was quite a bit of discussion about travel at the start of the last budget cycle, and the OFM set out some guidelines for travel. The legislature didn't end up changing any of those in the budget, but the team felt like, or the leadership team felt like some of those things made sense. And this is obvious. We do not feel that this is a topic that's going away. And so we wanted to be responsive to some of those budget concerns about travel. Yeah.
So this is my issue is, first of all, if you reduce, what I've seen people, if you reduce the amount of travel that you've been doing, you're telling the people that are watching you that you didn't need that training before. And now because you're being watched, you think you need to reduce it from that. That would be my thing. And I'm going to keep on going here. So, and at the end of the day, I believe we're an enterprise fund. And if this board did not want staff to go, they would tell you no. I understand that you're dealing with OFM and some of these other players and it's kind of looking over the fence. If they can't travel, why do you get to travel? Well, if they were in this position in this board and what we do on this board, the training that we get, not only us, and I'm not talking about the board, I'm talking about staff.
Yeah.
The staff doesn't have the ability to go where we're going and to interact and do the networking that we do there with other staff members. They can't bring back issues and ideas that we need here at this board. I'm not comfortable with you reducing your travel. And I might be the only one up here, but I do believe travel is important, not only for the education and training that we also get, but the networking with the other groups that we interact with over the years to make sure that what we're doing is right and maybe even bring back some ideas that we didn't think about before. So I would, and I know it's after you're gone, but I would rather have somebody tell me that you can't go than have you guys tell me you don't want to go.
Yeah,
Personally.
those are all valid points. And ultimately, the board is the final decision maker. And if the board wanted to overrule the leadership team on administrative items, you certainly have that within your authority. But that was the discussion and decision of the leadership team.
These conferences that we have discussions on, that we can bring back to our own group, which makes it stronger. Because if we want to live in a cocoon, nobody needs to travel anywhere. We'll just keep on doing the same thing over and over again until we don't have any money left. So that's personally my issue.
Thank you, Pat.
What's up?
You said, thank you, Pat.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
For a comment, I agree with everything Pat said. And this time.
This side, yeah.
This time. But how are you gonna go out there and tell other people how successful this board has been if you don't have the opportunity to speak with them directly? I think that's part of it, not just bringing back ideas here. We don't necessarily have an obligation to Colorado Police and Fire or whatever it is, but I think it speaks to the success of the board and you spreading the policies, the initiatives, and the success of this board in the legislative arena and in the way that we operate could be a lot of help to other boards who don't do what we do. And so it speaks to both sides of that. And I can just reiterate what Pat said, but I agree with his reasoning.
Yeah. One of the things we talked about is this doesn't apply to any travel that would be associated with somebody being asked to be a speaker at a conference. So like, for instance, to your point, Mark, Jacob was asked to go speak to NC PERS last year about the board's success with the benefit improvement legislation. That would not have been affected by this travel change. The hope is that we can still get the same education. Some of it might be online as opposed to in person, but I'm totally sensitive to your points as well, Pat.
Go ahead, Jay.
Thank you. First, I want to say I appreciate the spirit of why staff and leadership got to this place of trying to really be thoughtful about impacts and budget and all the conversations we're all having. We're having them at all levels of government right now. So I just appreciate the spirit of what's here. But one of the things that I talk about a lot with my staff is what's hard is when budgets are tight, it's easy to say the first thing to start cutting is training and travel and opportunities to grow people. And when we do that, when we stop training, we stop being innovative and we stand still and we don't move forward. And I know there's a lot of online opportunities that are out there, but the networking piece and the opportunity to have a side conversation with somebody about how did this actually work in when you implemented it? And what are the pros and cons? You can't get that online. So I'm not going to interject and make any motion to overturn the decision that's made here. I'm kind of speaking somewhat in support, but I also understand the spirit of which you've brought this recommendation forward. I'm just going to say I struggle with doing something we're not mandated to do. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, since so many of you have similar concerns, you'll be adopting the agency's budget for the coming up here, I think in the June meeting. We can make a specific point to call out that piece of the agency's budget related to training and travel so that you can adjust that at that time if it makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the update is the dual response newsletter. Next newsletter is completed and will be mailed out in June. Right now, we don't have a specific date, I don't think, but it's mid-June. Then another item I wanted to follow. Well, let me skip ahead to fiduciary education first off. So there was NC Purge just had their annual conference. The IFEBP has a trustees institute coming up in July. So if there's any board members interested in that educational opportunity, please let the team know. We've had some stakeholder outreach as well in the past period and coming up. So there was since our last meeting, there was a Seattle Fire Wellness Seminar, and the State Council had their education seminar in Kennewick just last week. We had a couple people there. And then coming also here just recently, WASPIC had their expo in Spokane. WACOPS had their spring meeting in Everett. And then the next item on the list where we will also have attendance is the State Council Annual Convention. That'll be after the date of your June board meeting, but just to give you a heads up that one's coming up. The other item that I wanted to talk with you a little bit about, and this gets back to the succession planning topic again. That'll be something that's going on all interim. One of the things that was pointed out to me by, Karen and I were having a conversation, is I had thought that I had been clear to you guys that my retirement date was after the end of the short session next year. Now, I meant that literally. So I was joking with Karen. It was like, no, when they sine die, I sine die. And she pointed out to me that I hadn't actually mentioned a specific date, and that although sine die will be in March, that there'd be some things that would need to be resolved after that. So just for your planning purposes, March 31st is the last date that I'm planning on being in the office. One of the planning purposes that kind of came out of that discussion with Karen that I wanted to bring to your attention, she mentioned as part of your potential administrative items that you had on your agenda this upcoming interim is an executive director recruitment. My personal thoughts on that is that if you are going to do a recruitment, you need to make a go, no-go decision on that no later than your July meeting. There won't be an August meeting. If you wait until September, you're not going to have a chance to get things done. There's some benefit to actually even doing it sooner than July, because in addition to the executive director position, everything is on hold as far as recruiting a potential replacement for Jacob. If he's the going to be the next executive director, he can't really hire anybody while he's sitting in that spot. Neither can I. So that also is on hold and would benefit from you guys making a go, no-go decision on the executive director recruitment as soon as you are comfortable, whether that's July or June or even today. But I wanted to throw that out for your consideration as well. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my administrative update, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Appreciate that. Question for Tor. During our administrative meeting this morning, we had, Steve kind of just mentioned the date and kind of firmed things up. And we had talked about having an executive session at our next, following our next meeting, or at our next meeting, not following, but at our next meeting. For the purpose of discussing these positions, would that be appropriate? Can we have that on the agenda? How would you like that, or suggest that be titled?
There, as you know from previous trainings, Mr. Chair, the presumption is that all meetings shall be public unless there's a specific exception that applies, right? So a specific exception that can apply with respect to personnel related decisions is definitively the evaluation of public employees, okay? But with regards to actually planning for an as yet and unfilled position from a policy perspective, I would urge, maybe we can have some discussions, but I would urge the board to consider by making sure that we fall squarely within the permitted exceptions, if you will, okay? So that may require a discussion of policy, forward-looking policy and or planning may be more of an open session item. I'm saying, generally speaking, okay, if that makes any sense. So happy to clarify as best I can now, but also happy to follow up later.
Just, we have talked, and Jacob's done a great job, and obviously there's interest on that behalf. If we were, because we're going to be forced to make, not forced, we will have to make a decision whether or not we stay internal or go external. And I think part of my thought process is if we're going to be discussing Jacob, and I'm sorry, you're here, then that would fall in the evaluation of an employee.
Absolutely. Okay. Then you would be evaluating the performance of a public employee, and you would have, you could call an executive session to do so. And you should call an executive session to do so. Exactly. So that's great. And I appreciate your sensitivity to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. The evaluation piece is exec session, and but the go, no go decision about a recruitment, that would have to be an open public.
Correct. Got you on that.
Motion and a vote.
Yeah, I just kind of thinking openly.
Yeah.
If the group decided that Jacob was the right fit, then we know that we would have to fill Jacob's spot. If the group felt that Jacob wasn't the right fit, we would have to announce and go for a search for the executive director spot. And so I think that's kind of what we need to figure out, which one goes first, or how do we go? So could I guess, without objection from this group, I'd like to submit that we have on our agenda of executive session, placed on the agenda for our next meeting.
To evaluate the performance of public employees.
I thought I said that. Thanks, Tor. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you could make that, you can make that motion. We can certainly put that on the agenda.
Motion been made and seconded to add the executive session for the purpose to discuss employee evaluation. Yeah. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Aye. So be it. Thank you.
The final item is the next meeting. The board is scheduled for June 18th. And then if there are any If there aren't any other questions, that would conclude my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. All right, looking at our agenda under public comment, the staff received no comments in advance of today's meeting for distribution to the board, so we have no public comments made. Our next meeting has been set for June 18th, and without any other business before us, would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion been made and seconded. Discussion, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned till June 18th. Thank you very much. Good meeting.